America watching horror during the chaotic presidential debate last night as President Trump and Joe Biden rebuked and taunted each other on national TV. The heated confrontation gave the candidates little opportunity to actually debate policy. There's a new CBS News poll out that finds 83% of viewers thought the tone of the debate was negative. For an analysis on the evening, let us bring in Dr. Larry Sabato. He is the director of the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. Larry, always great to see you. So let's talk about what we have been talking about all morning long, what everybody seems to be talking about, which is President Trump's refusal to explicitly condemn white supremacists potentially linked to unrest in the United States. What did you make of that moment?
Well, first, I'd like to meet the 17% who didn't think the debate was negative.
I was thinking the same thing.
They've got to be fundamentally optimists, so they might help us. Anyway, I live in Charlottesville and watched the Unite the Right rally and experienced what happened after President Trump said the things that he did. I'm not going to get into that. But it's disappointing. It's always disappointing when this president, and he's the only one, this president cannot openly, clearly, categorically denounce white supremacists. He was given several opportunities. He never did it. He's been given opportunities before. He always tiptoes through the tulips because he knows that they're part of his base.
So which topics brought sort of the most pushback from the candidates?
How could I tell? I think President Trump interrupted Vice President Biden 73 times. And yes, I know that Vice President Biden interrupted Trump, too, though not 73 times. And then there was the moderator. It was the most incoherent debate I've ever watched at any level. And I'm dating myself. I've watched every single presidential debate live in real time, including the four in 1960. This will historically forever be the worst. I guarantee you.
You know, it's funny, Larry, you mentioned the 1960 presidential debate. I saw an interesting tweet yesterday from a reporter at the New York Times who said, Nixon didn't wear makeup in 1960, and our parents were talking about it for decades. And here we are now with the display that we saw yesterday. And again, I was looking through your Twitter feed yesterday evening, and you suggested that the remaining presidential debates be canceled. I'm curious, Vice President Biden and Senator Kamala Harris have both said that they intend on carrying forward with the debates. They think it's important for Vice President Biden to speak directly to the American people. You're starting to hear a different sort of song and dance from President Trump's supporters about it. But I do wonder if the point of these debates is to inform the American people and to provide them with some specific policies that you would implement if you become president, if you're elected president, or if you are reelected to the presidency. Is there a way forward if both candidates agree to continue these debates?
Well, all I can say is that Vice President Biden must be a glutton for punishment. To me, what happened last night gives both of the Democrats, but particularly Biden, the opportunity to say thanks, but no thanks. He's not going to lose any votes for that. He might gain some because it was so awful and people left it feeling they had to go take a long, hot shower. I don't know that it's going to be possible to restructure this. How are the Trump people going to allow the rules to change? They aren't going to agree, for example, to having the moderator have a little button there and cut the mic off when President Trump goes too long or starts interrupting. I'd love it if they did. Again, dating myself, I remember the old game shows from the 1950s where people were put in this hermetically sealed plastic so they couldn't hear what the other contestant was saying. But we can't do those things. It's a presidential debate. It ought to have a degree of dignity to it. Forget about it. Forget about it. I don't think the next two, if they have them, will be as bad as the one last night was. But they're not going to be any exemplars for the future.
You know, Vlad said that, you know, this would have been and should have been an opportunity for us to hear what the next 4 years could be, either with the same president or with a new one. But I wonder if the nature of these debates has been changing, not just because of last night's performance, but it's been sort of inching in this direction for a while now, when you consider the 24-hour news cycle, this like focus on zingers and one-liners that get repeated over and over again, add in social media and, you know, the sharing of edited information or misinformation. Maybe it's not even just about these two men and how they performed. Maybe, you know, a lot has changed about the role of a presidential debate. Maybe it's just about getting in a sharp one-liner and that's it.
It may well be. We have clearly moved from news to entertainment in loads of ways, and unfortunately, debates are part of this. I don't see any way to counteract it unless the candidates and their campaigns really agree to hard and fast rules with penalties for breaking the rules. There have to be penalties, because you're always going to have one candidate at least who decides he's going to run roughshod over the rules. And President Trump is kind of at the extreme end of that, but it means it's virtually impossible to have the kind of give and take that you had even in 1960. I wish people would go back, maybe on YouTube, go back and just watch a 10-minute segment of any of the four debates. All right, you're going to be shocked because they were so pleasant and so deferential to one another. Oh, Senator Kennedy, I agree with what you just said. Vice President Nixon, I think you've made a very good point. And it was substantive. We talked about international relations, domestic policies of all sorts. Yes, they had their disagreements, but I don't remember a single sharp retort. That America's gone forever, and you can argue about the reasons why. But one thing's for sure, we need to end the pain. End the pain. If what we saw last night is what we're going to see twice more.
So to the point about the history, Larry, and you know, I would also encourage our viewers, if they're interested, to go back and read the Lincoln-Douglas debates. I mean, if you want to talk men talking about policy, there's, you know, pages and pages and pages and pages, all also very deferential, although there are some zingers in the mold of a 19th century diplomat in there. But I do wonder about whether or not these debates have moved the needle. You mentioned the 1960 debates, and we all have those moments where we recall, you know, Senator Benson and Vice President Quayle, and you're no Jack Kennedy, or we recall Ronald Reagan saying he won't exploit Walter Mondale's youth, and President Bush looking at his watch. Did those moments, if you go back and you look at them objectively, for example, in the case of President H.W. Bush looking at his watch during that debate, did that significantly change the mind of some voters who were on the fence about whether or not to vote for Governor Bill Clinton or for President Bush? Or was it already baked in, and we in the media have subsequently made it into a thing?
It didn't change things at all. I was there at the University of Richmond in the room when Bush looked at his watch, and I'll be honest with you, I missed it. It was just because the camera was focused in such a way that it came across on the TV screen. It crystallized the belief that President Bush at least wasn't having a good time, and beyond that, that maybe his time was up. But it was already set in stone. It really was. And it was set in stone in 1988 when Benson zinged Dan Quayle. And it was set in stone already when Ronald Reagan had that retort in 1984 about age to Walter Mondale, using the three examples you've just given us. So this is icing on the cake in some ways, and the cake's more delicious with the icing normally. Last night's icing was rancid. But I don't think fundamentally they change much of anything. Now, I'm glad we have them because it puts the candidates on the record about some things, if you can actually hear them through the interruptions, and that helps for whoever's elected. You can hold them accountable. But in terms of changing votes, no, we are polarized. We are tribalized. We tune in to root for our side. period. And even if our candidate has a bad night, we say, just wait till next time. I know he or she will do better next time. So I'm glad we have them. Makes people think about politics. But these are not the central swivel game changers that they are presented as being constantly in the press.
Quick question then. What about the vice presidential debate? What has its role been sort of historically? And do you think that perhaps this one will be way more productive than the presidential debate?
Oh, that you just summarized the headlines on the day after the vice presidential debate. More civil debate among vice presidential candidates. How could they be as bad or worse? It's not possible. So they're going to look good by comparison, even if this is more rough and tumble than it usually is. But I said the effect of presidential debates recently has been next to nothing. Some of the ones earlier in the 20th century were, in fact, influential. The vice presidential debate has never moved the needle. Never. Not even Benson versus Quayle didn't move the needle. This one, in all probability, isn't going to do it either. But again, it's good that we have it. Let people get to know the candidates, get to know a bit about the issues, and maybe this time the candidates will let each other talk. Because frankly, the stakes are lower and the audience will be much lower than last night.
Yeah, very good point. Larry Sabato, thank you so much. Always great talking to you.
Thank you.